born for this. Bring them on. The Stigr Shaman Assassin build is a very hybrid build weaving stealth, magic, and melee combat to deadly effect. This character build primarily plays as a Conjuration Nightblade of sorts, weaving dagger backstabs and magic from the protection of the shadows. However, as an agent under the employ of Ulfric's Stormcloaks, he is often needed on the front lines and can hold his own there. He can also provide healing and ranged magic support in large Civil War battles. Stigr also comes with some strong backstory and personality components, providing direction for immersive roleplay. If this sounds like fun to you, then watch on. And as always, chapters have been marked, so feel free to jump around to any section you're interested in. Key mods for this build include Ordinator, Perks of Skyrim, Andromeda, Unique Standing Stones of Skyrim, Apocalypse, Magic of Skyrim, and Triumvirate, Mage Archetypes. Optional mods to flesh this build out further include Necromantic Grimoire Creation, Forgotten Magic Redone SE, and Classic Classes and Birthsigns Reimagined. Much of the gear shown in the video footage is also from various mods, but I'll go over those in the gear section. For race, I chose Nord, as Stigr is an orphan of Nord warriors who died in the Great War. With Imperius, you eventually unlock the Avatar Major Power, which regens 10% of your missing stamina and magicka every 30 seconds, keeping your stamina from getting too low during prolonged fights, and also quickly refilling your magicka meter for Undying Ghost casts. The class I used for this build is a custom one. For Classic Classes and Birthsigns Reimagined major skills, I chose Block, Illusion, Light Armor, One-Handed, Restoration, and Sneak. For Birthsign, I chose the Shadow Sign, which makes you 10% harder to detect while sneaking. This helps a ton with melee sneak attacks early in the game. For Standing Stone, I took the Ritual Stone very early and kept it for the remainder of my playthrough. This stone is basically the cornerstone of this build. The way it works is it captures the spirits of the corpses around you, then the next time you enter combat, these spirits are released as friendly ghosts to aid you against your enemies. Once you have vanquished your enemies, the spirits that fought alongside you are dismissed and forgotten, leaving you to collect more before your next fight. One cool thing about this is that if you are stealthily killing enemies and not getting detected, you are technically not entering combat. This means you collect more and more spirits to deploy once detected, or whenever desired if you're good enough. And once you found all 13 stones, you get the Requiem power, which gives your spirits an extra 1000 health and 50% faster movement and attack speed for 45 seconds. This adds a ton of power to an already strong ability. For religion, I picked the Old Ways, which fit the loner shaman archetype really well, thematically, but game-wise it also supports a hybrid assassin warrior mage really well too. It allows you to sacrifice gems to choose to buff defense, offense, or even sneak and sneak attack damage. Take a look in the description for a full guide on the Old Ways in the Winter Sun mod. For the attribute spread, I put 1 point into magicka, 2 points into health, and 2 points into stamina every 5 levels. But once I felt comfortable with my health and stamina levels, I started dumping more points into magicka to strengthen the Undying Ghost Conjuration spell and the Spectral Armor Forgotten Magic power. Okay, moving on to the key perks for this level 50 build, starting with Block. I took both levels of Mastery for more damage reduction. Then I took a few perks to reinforce the Agile Warrior playstyle. Quick Reflexes is great for pitched Civil War battles, helping you not to get blindsided. Time will slow with a power attack coming from any direction, allowing you to interrupt the power attack with a block bash or to regain positional advantage. I also took Timed Block and Poke the Dragon to add some precision defensive options, further rewarding agile timing over tank blocking. Illusion is an important skill that provides important passive effects that help to portray the favor of the spirit world in combat. It also provides some fun gameplay diversity to help fill out the playstyle of this character a bit. I started with both ranks of Mastery to make illusion spells and effects both stronger and cheaper. I also took all perks in the Commanding Presence subtree, so Commanding Presence, Crown of the False King, Imperious Splendor, and Protect Your God. These perks give nearby allies increased attack damage, aggression, armor, and resistances. This will work for your Stormcloak comrades during the Civil War quest, Dream Thralls, and even your conjurations once you take Master of the Mind. So you'll definitely want to take Master of the Mind. Kindred Mage and Fickle Fate are good if you'll be using the traditional illusion spells, and Dream Thief is good in very specific situations, but Master of the Mind is worth the 4 perk points on its own in my opinion. Speaking of sneaking up on a sleeping NPC and manipulating their unconscious thoughts, Dream Charm is a really cool shamanistic way to gain favor with the locals for a creeper like Stigr. Dream Gaze takes this concept a step further. It compels the NPC to follow you until released. This does not turn the character into a fully featured follower, however. It's more like Tolfdir from the Mages Guild quest, where he does follow you and assists you in combat, but he still has a mind of his own. You cannot interact with these following NPCs to get them to wait, follow, attack, or hold your stuff, but they are affected by the Commanding Presence perks, so they will be quite strong. Last but certainly not least is Silent Storm. We'll be using lots of spells while sneaking, and the core gameplay combo of this build requires remaining undetected until a boss enemy is encountered. So I took both ranks here, but really you can easily avoid using shouts from sneak if you want to use that perk somewhere else. Moving on now to Light Armor. For any kind of melee fighter on legendary difficulty, reaching the armor cap is really important for survivability. So I took both perks in Light Armor Mastery and Light Armor Fit. This, along with some unperked but alchemical boosted tempering, got me to the cap fairly easily. I also took the Initiative perk for the increased stamina regen. As a dagger fighter, you'll need to be constantly attacking as rapidly as possible, and you'll want the stamina to support this. With Wildcat, when you're low on stamina, your damage really suffers, so this helps keep it topped off. Speaking of daggers, let's move on to the one-handed skill. I started with both ranks of Mastery for more regular and critical damage. I also took Furious Strength, which strengthens power attacks and unlocks decapitations. We do make some limited use of power attacks with this build, but let's face it, this one was all about that visceral gore. What? I can't help it. On the subject of power attacks, Disciplined Fighter reduces the stamina cost for them. With this build, we use some of the Triumvirate Shaman spells to enchant our power attacks with armor and magic resistance reductions, so I often opened up combat with that. This perk makes that initial stamina cost a little less painful for the rest of the fight. To strengthen our dagger attacks, I took all 3 ranks of Bite Marks, which applies a stacking 3 points of bleed damage for a full minute. This really snowballs with fast regular dagger attacks, and it's fun to watch even a dragon's life bar tick away after hitting them with a couple dozen dagger strikes. This rapid-fire offensive style is further strengthened with both ranks of the Savage perk, which gives dagger attacks a massive 50% damage buff after 3 hits within less than 2 seconds between. The rest of this subtree had to do with different directional power attacks, which in my experience are situational and distract from this main combat style. So I felt those perks were better served elsewhere. Moving on now to Restoration, I took both ranks of Mastery to both strengthen and cheapen restoration spells, as we will make some use of them with this build. Descending Light rapidly regenerates your magicka when entering combat, which synergizes really well with the Undying Ghost AE Conjuration spell that consumes all of your magicka, and with the Phantom Armor power from Forgotten Magic redone. More on both of these in the spells and gameplay combos sections later. The Vigilant perk lets you maintain your first ward in every battle for free, which was very helpful for fighting dragons until the Dragonrend shout was unlocked. Once that's obtained, this perk is less useful, so you may decide to respec this perk somewhere else at that point. Until then though, dragons are going to pose a serious problem for this build, so it is absolutely a key perk early on in the game. Warrior's Flame is another great perk, randomly increasing stamina and magicka regen for you and your allies, and decreasing the same regen rates for enemies. This is useful for both your Stormcloak allies and your summoned allies, both of which you'll have plenty of throughout the playthrough. I also took Spirit Tutors, which does help strengthen restoration spells beyond the Mastery perk. This is great on its own, but it also reinforces the roleplay of this build as a conduit between the spirit world and the corporeal one. Be aware that it can take a long time for these Spirit Tutors to appear though, especially if you have mods that add new random encounters. To increase your chances, avoid fast traveling and stick to the roads where these random encounters happen most often. Sneak is an incredibly important skill for this build, providing both our primary means of defense and offense, so I invested pretty heavily in this one. I started with both ranks in Mastery, making Sneak more effective. I also took Fog of War, which helps you to remain safe if the enemy is engaged with allies. Infiltrator provides a 75% muffle effect, which can be supplemented with some illusion spells, which I'll talk more about in the spells section. This one is actually optional though, since we'll be using the Predator's Grace boots, which give a 100% muffle effect. If you get the boots before you get to this perk, you can skip this one and use the perk point elsewhere. And right behind you is extremely important for all non-ranged assassin builds, but particularly this one where we're trying our best to remain completely undetected until the boss character. More on this in the gameplay combos section later. You'll also want to take Sneak Attack, Assassin's Blade, and both ranks of Backstab. We really want to be able to one-shot enemies with our dagger from sneak while remaining undetected in order to accumulate more spirits with the ritual stone. Okay, so let's now take a look at the endgame equipment loadouts I used for this build. Most of these were self-enchanted using non-perked enchanting skill at level 100, boosted by non-perked alchemy potions also at level 100. On the head, I ended up with the padded fur hood and barbarian hero circlet. Both of these can be found in immersive armors, and with that mod you can wear both a circlet and a hood at the same time. This helps make up for a lack of smithing perks and the fact that we can't temper our Predator's Grace boots. I put a Magicka regen enchantment on the hood, and the circlet got a Fortify Magicka enchantment. The Fortification enchantment helps conjure a stronger Undying Ghost, explained in the spells section next, and as that spell consumes all of your Magicka, the regen enchantment helps you to recover afterward. For the body slot, I used the Apotheos armor, also from the Immersive Armors mod. I put a sneak attack damage enchantment on that, which comes from Anai's Summer Mist enchantment mod. Being able to kill enemies from stealth in one shot is key to avoid triggering the Ritual Stone spirits before you're ready. On the hands, I used the Shaman glove, which comes from Immersive Armors once again. I enchanted these with Fortify one-handed for more damage with our daggers. For the boots, I used Predator's Grace. This is a vanilla piece found in a secret area above the waterfall at Hag's End. It provides a 100% muffle effect as well as stamina regen. The unofficial patch changes this from 1% stamina regen to 100% stamina regen, making this effect actually useful. This is a great underused item from the base game. The only downsides are that they look like a simple hide boot, and the fact that you can't temper them without the arcane smithing perk. To make up for this low armor rating on endgame gear, I used another underused feature of Immersive Armors, equipping an armored circlet under an armored hood. For the shield, I used the Nordic Orichalcum Light Shield from, you guessed it, Immersive Armors. The enchantment on that one was the simple Fortify block. For jewelry, I had several rings and amulets added to the favorites menu that I could swap around as needed. This adds a nice little shamanistic mechanic where the Stigr uses totemic talismans to cover his weaknesses where his magic cannot. For the necklace, primarily I used the Galder amulet. With the Zim's Immersive Artifacts mod, this one boosts all skills by 10% and increases skill progression for all skills by 10%. This is great for a hybrid warrior stealth mage build like this one. I also got lots of use from the Bone Amulet of the Long Night's Moon. This is a really long name for a Night Eye amulet. With the Hunterborn mod, you can craft this one with the Scrimshaw power with a leather strap and some small bones harvested from animals. You can get the Night Eye effect through Silent Spells or the Predator Vision mod, but using a bone necklace for it seemed more on brand for a shaman. For rings, I primarily used a ring of sneak attacks from Anai's Winter Sun Enchantments mod. As mentioned earlier, being able to one-shot enemies from stealth is a really important part of this build. A Hunterborn Scrimshaw piece, the Jagged Bone Ring provides an 8% boost to one-handed damage. The Ring of Surroundings, also from the Fishing creation, provides a 20% boost to sneak effectiveness, very useful throughout this playthrough, but particularly early on. And the Ring of Finister, another fishing item, provides 20% resistance to poison and shock, stacking on top of 20% resistance to magic in general. My primary weapon was the Kinjal dagger from the great, somewhat historically accurate weapons and Viking gear mod. This one looks sharp and deadly, and it is also significantly larger than the typical dagger, even in this game. This seems to lend it to more of a general role in open combat, like a short sword, as well as from stealth. The Bloodthorn dagger is also a base game item, which is also found at Hag's End, so clearing that dungeon should be a priority for the playthrough as soon as you're strong enough to take on enemy Forsworn, mages, Hagravens, and Ice Wraiths. This dagger has a built-in soul trap enchantment, giving you a way of filling soul gems of all sizes for the self-enchanted endgame gear described earlier. It could take a while to obtain, upgrade, and enchant fully the endgame gear as described, but there are some early and mid-game items that could help in the meantime. The Shrouded and Ancient Shrouded armor sets acquired during the Dark Brotherhood questline are fantastic sets with enchantments that are really useful for assassin classes. The Old Gods armor set is obtained from Madanach in Markarth through the Forsworn Conspiracy questline. There are Fortify Sneak and Magicka enchantments in the set, as well as a couple others that this build doesn't use, but it does look more the part of a shaman than the Shrouded stuff. Mehrunes Razor is a great mid-game weapon and can even be serviceable in the endgame. The base game version of this dagger has a small chance to kill an enemy outright, which is a great enchantment as long as you keep your attack volume high. Zim's Immersive Artifacts gives this blade a stacking disease damage enchantment, which is more useful for general use against living enemies anyway. Blade of Woe is another great dagger for general use. It's more suited for open combat, where the absorb health effect helps keep you alive in long drawn-out fights. Zim's Immersive Artifacts also adds a fear effect to the blade. This is great if your first backstab doesn't kill, but also has significant crowd control benefits for open combat. The Smoothed Bone Ring provides a muffle effect and can be crafted from the Hunterborn Scrimshaw menu using a small animal bone. Earlier in the playthrough, I also made good use of the Ring of Khajiit from the free fishing creation in the AE update. This one gives you a 10% faster movement speed, but more importantly gives you Hide, an invisibility spell which is incredibly useful before you get access to expert level illusion spells. While I didn't invest in any alchemy perks, I did make use of some poisons and potions. The endgame build is strong enough that you probably won't need these, but earlier on in the playthrough these can really come in handy. You can make a paralysis poison early on that also does lingering damage to health. The ingredients are really common and they can all be grown anywhere with plantable plots for a constant supply. The ingredients for this one are Mora Tapanella, Imp Stool, and Canis Root. Fortify Restoration Potions boost the strength of the restoration effect, which is different from the cost reduction of the enchanting effect. So these potions can make your restoration spells much stronger. This is for stronger healing spells, but also offensive restoration spells like Spirit Storm. The most common ingredients for this one are salt piles, which are widely available at any food vendor, and your choice of a Abyssian Longfin, Cyrodiilic Spadetail, or small antlers. Fortify Conjuration Potions greatly extend the time that conjurations stay active. This is very useful for this build since we aren't investing any perks in the conjuration tree and aren't getting any extended time there. This is great for keeping your Undying Ghost and Avenging Wraith summons out longer. Light Armor and Block are the main defensive skills for open combat with this build, and we can craft a potion that provides both. This one is a little less useful once you reach the armor cap, but it can be extremely useful earlier on. You can make this potion with these ingredients: Honeycomb, Tundra Cotton, and Lunamoth Wing or Skeever Tail. And finally, the Fortify One-Handed Potion is very useful for this build as, with the unofficial patch, it buffs your damage output with daggers for both sneak attacks and open combat. Here are the most common ingredients for this: Canis Root, and Bear Claws, Hanging Moss, or Rock Warbler Egg. Now, if you're not running the unofficial patch, you'll need to use Fortify Archery Potions to boost the damage with daggers. Here are the most common ingredients for that: Canis Root and Juniper Berries. These ingredients can also be planted for an unlimited supply. I used a large variety of spells for this build, some of which branched into schools of magic that aren't core skills. Some of these spells are unique properties which make them useful with no skill or perk investment necessary. There is lots to go over here, but each spell does serve a purpose, so grab a snack and settle in. We'll start with the alteration spells because it's first alphabetically, and I have a strange compulsive need to organize things. The great enabler for unperked alteration spells is, of course, Okado's Recital. This allows you to store 3 spells that are auto-cast each time you enter combat. For this build, I hooked up Stave of Ferocity, a Triumvirate Shaman alteration spell which enchants power attacks to reduce the target's armor rating. Visions of Opportunity, a Triumvirate Shaman restoration spell which reduces armor and magic resistance of a random enemy within 40 feet. And before I hit the armor cap with gear, I used a flesh spell to boost damage reduction. But once I hit the armor cap, I swapped this one out for Visions of Healing, another Triumvirate Shaman restoration spell which absorbs health from random nearby enemies. Much like Alteration, there were some conjuration spells that I found useful even though I didn't invest any perk points into the tree. The conjuration spells I used are Conjure Avenging Wraith from the Apocalypse Magic of Skyrim mod, which summons a ghost with a ranged attack, which takes on the level of the last thing that killed it. This unique property keeps this spell useful at all levels, even with no perks in Conjuration. Conjure Undying Ghost, which comes from the Necromantic Grimoire creation included in the paid AE upgrade. And Create Water Totem, a Triumvirate Shaman spell which provides group healing over time to the player and all nearby allies. This is really useful in large open Civil War battles. Moving on now to Illusion, I made a ton of use of Ghost Walk, a novice spell provided by the Apocalypse spell pack. It provides a brief period of invisibility, but when it ends, either by expiring or when the player attacks, they are teleported back to the position they were in when the spell was cast. Phantom Shroud is added by the Forgotten Magic Redone mod and makes sneaking more effective by a scaled amount for a scaled duration. This one levels up separately from the player and can be strengthened individually. The perks I chose for this one were Shadow Veil, which increases both the stealth bonus and cost, Elusiveness, which gives a chance to completely evade an attack, Dread Aura, which could cause an enemy that hits you to incur the fear effect, Wraith Form, which extends the duration, and Battle Lust, which boosts health and stamina for if you get caught. Make sure to use this spell liberally during infiltration phases to remain undetected, continuing to hoard the spirits of your slain enemies. Finally, I also made use of the Spectral Missiles spell, also from Forgotten Magic Redone. This one gives a direct range damage option when one is needed. It launches a scaling number of missiles, each randomly doing 5% of your magicka as fire, frost, or shock damage. I used the following FMR perks for this one. Spectral Barrage, which adds an additional missile to the spell. Mastermind, which restores a bit of magicka for each missile that hits. Arcane Volley, which makes each subsequent missile do more damage. Arcane Trance, which reduces the magicka spent with each missile. And the fifth perk I leave up to you and however you like to use this spell. For Restoration, I used Lesser and Steadfast Wards, mostly against dragons, at least before I unlocked the Dragon Wren shout. I also got some use out of Spirit Storm, one of my favorite Triumvirate Shaman spells. This one casts a slow-moving spirit cloud that has a wide area of effect, and shreds groups of enemies, tearing through their stamina and magicka before deleting their health bars. This one is even stronger with a Fortify Restoration potion. And finally, you'll want to have your best healing spell ready to go just in case. For powers, I made lots of use of the Phantom Armor power from Forgotten Magic Redone. This one drains magicka while active, but allows your magicka pool to be used as a shield, absorbing 25% of all incoming damage and draining magicka instead of health. This provides damage reduction beyond armor rating, which makes you very tough to kill. Great for when you're ready to stop sneaking, stop casting, and just fight toe-to-toe. Perks I took for this FMR spell were Arcane Mind, which fortifies your magicka pool by 50%, Concentration, which reduces the amount of magicka drained and also increases the damage absorbed, Arcane Mending, which provides a chance to restore some health each time you take damage, Spectral Cloak, which increases elemental resistance whenever you're hit with that element, and Crushing Force, which reduces the cost of power attacks while the power is active. And a quick tip on this one, you don't have to wait for your magicka to empty to deactivate this. Simply activate the power again while it's active to turn it off. Alongside this, I also used the Avatar Nord racial power from the Imperious Race Overhaul mod. This one hugely boosts stamina and magicka regen, keeping your Phantom Armor shield topped off for its duration. The Requiem power comes from the Andromeda Standing Stone Overhaul mod and is unlocked once you find all the Standing Stones. It massively buffs the health and attack rate of the Ritual Stone spirits. Mora's Grasp is a power that you get from the Hidden Twilight Black Book, and it provides some crowd control in an area of effect. And Summon Spectral Assassin provides a ghost buddy for when you need some backup. It's unlocked in the Dark Brotherhood questline. Moving on to shouts, Aura Whisper is useful for all stealth builds. It provides a Detect Life effect for scouting purposes. Become Ethereal fits the spirit theme and is also very useful for getting out of trouble, providing a period of invincibility. Call of Valor also fits the theme and provides another ghost buddy to fight alongside you when you need some backup. And Dragon Rend is almost a necessity against dragons since we have very limited range options and this forces them into melee combat. For roleplay, let's start with Stigr's backstory. He was born under the sign of the Shadow, and growing up around the traditional superstitious Nords of Windhelm, this immediately branded him as an outcast. This was compounded with the fact that he became an orphan when his parents both died fighting in the Great War. Left alone and feared, he was taken in by his parents' comrades, raised by soldiers in the barracks of the Palace of the Kings. Growing up in a soldier barracks where people are constantly getting cycled in and out, as well as being shunned by society, caused Stigr to grow up quite isolated. Being unable to form any sort of personal connection in the time he had with the people he lived with, as well as being actively shunned by those suspicious of his dark birth sign, led him to be isolated in his formative years. The way his still-forming brain dealt with the severe isolation was to create voices for him to interact with when no one else would. He interprets these voices as spirits, but externally this is debatable. They do seem to aid him in some ways in the form of the clairvoyance spell when lost, and autocast spells that strengthen him and weaken his enemies in combat. This is a key mystery for this character during the playthrough. Is his strength granted by psychosis, unleashing his true potential in combat, or is he really invoking spirits from another world to aid him? To him, these spirits are very, very real, but to others from the outside, it's just further reinforcement of their conclusion that he's just crazy and to be avoided. Still, he did have some talent for stealth, and this did not go unnoticed. He was trained in the ways of frontline combat and battlefield tactics, and groomed as an assassin from an early age. While he was shunned and feared by most of society, he was still valued by military leadership as a potentially master infiltrator. So, when Ulfric Stormcloak began plotting his rebellion, he activated Stigr as a sleeper agent assassin. But since his rebellion was hungry for frontline bodies, his skill in close quarters combat could not go unutilized. He would soon be sent on missions, both stealthily eliminating key figures of the Legion's defenses and as a deadly melee warrior. After the war effort, Stigr is honored for his key efforts in the war and then dismissed from active service as a reward. However, Stigr was never looking for honor, he was looking for companionship and a sense of belonging. So when he was released from duty, he was left feeling betrayed, not proud of his accomplishments. This freshly renewed sense of isolation could lead him down the sinister path of the Dark Brotherhood, where a family awaits him with open arms. From there, the world is your oyster, but I'd suggest leaning into Stigr's pariah status, sleeping in the wilds with the campfire mod whenever possible. I also liked focusing on the internal voices aspect of his psychosis, readily heeding the will of various Daedric princes that seek him out. On a final note, when Stigr felt extra lonely, I liked to use the Dream Gaze perk on various sleeping Stormcloaks, including Galmar and even Ulfric himself. This forces the NPC to follow you and fight by your side. Though you won't get all the follower mechanics for them, it can be a fun roleplay mechanic, and these NPCs can be quite strong in battle. Alright, moving on now to gameplay combos. Let's start with the Spirit Horde. This combo makes up the key gameplay mechanic for this build. With the Andromeda Ritual Stone, the spirit of each corpse you encounter is stored and then released to fight alongside you next time you enter combat. However, as an assassin, you never technically enter combat until you're detected. This allows you to systematically dispatch all enemy pawns in an area, collecting all of the spirits for one massive assault. I like to save these spirits for the boss encounter at the end of an area. At this point, simply approach the boss without sneaking, and all accumulated spirits will be released at once to take on their former master. To add to the strength of this, use the Requiem unlockable power, also associated with the Standing Stone. It gives each spirit an additional 1000 health and increases their movement and attack speed by 50%. These spirits are also affected by the illusion perks Commanding Presence, Crown of the False King, Imperious Splendor, and Protect Your God, making them even stronger and more aggressive. This is an awesome and spectacular way to cap off a methodical stealth infiltration with a grand finale. Sometimes you'll need to clear an area inhabited by non-living enemies such as Draugr, ghosts, vampires, or skeletons. These enemies do not have spirits that can be absorbed by the Ritual Stone. This is when the next combo called Gemini comes in handy. You can clear most of these areas through stealth, infiltration, and backstabs alone, but if you get caught, you won't have the Ritual Stone spirits to help. At this point, you can use the Undying Ghost spell from the Necromantic Grimoire Creation Club spell pack. This spell uses up all of your magicka, and the ghost's attributes scale with the amount of magicka consumed. So, we can make it stronger by consuming a Fortify Magicka potion, and make it last longer by consuming a Fortify Conjuration potion before casting. The Undying Ghost is also affected by the illusion perks Commanding Presence, Crown of the False King, Imperious Splendor, and Protect Your God, making him even stronger and more aggressive. After casting this spell, you'll be left with no magicka, but with the Descending Light Restoration perk, you'll regain it quickly. This can be vastly sped up with the Nord avatar power from the Imperious mod as well. With this vastly increased magicka regen, you can now also make better use of the Phantom Armor power from Forgotten Magic Redone. This one beefs up your defenses substantially with a portion of incoming damage draining magicka instead of health. This additional layer of defense is separate from the 85% physical damage reduction you get by reaching the armor cap, and it also provides some defense against magic damage. See Phantom Armor in the spells section earlier for more details. While active, this power does constantly drain magicka, but with the regen buffed as much as it is, it will stay topped off for a good stretch of time. So, by drinking your potions, casting Undying Ghost, then Avatar, then Phantom Armor, you get one very strong spirit minion instead of many, but you are also far more powerful in melee combat yourself. This combination should be more than enough to take on a boss of an undead area. Okay, the final gameplay combo for this build is called Death by 1,000 Cuts. It's the main open combat melee combination you'll want to use for Civil War battles or when Sneak has failed. We have the Triumvirate Shaman spell Stave of Ferocity hooked up to Okada's Recital, which enchants power attacks with an effect that lessens the armor rating and magic resistance of the enemy. We'll couple this effect with the stacking bleed damage from Ordinator's dagger perks to form an effective means of offense. When entering non-stealth combat, first find an opening in your target's defense. This can be done by distracting them with minions, landing a timed block, or interrupting a power attack with a shield bash of your own, either of which causes a stagger. Then approach with a regular dagger attack cancelled into a power attack. This will give you 2 stacks of bleed damage along with the armor and magic resistance debuffs from Stave of Ferocity. At this point, follow up with as many quick regular dagger attacks as you can. The bleed damage over time will continue to stack up with each attack until the enemy's life bar is noticeably quickly ticking down. The enemy will eventually recover from that first stagger, so be ready to defend. But also be ready to take advantage of any further opportunity to land your attacks and add to that stacking bleed damage. And that does it for another original Skyrim build concept. I really hope you enjoyed this one and that you can at least use some of the concepts here in one of your own playthroughs. I really try to make every new build guide my best one yet. If you appreciate quality content like this, then I'd appreciate a thumbs up, or even a sub if you'd like to see more of this kind of content in the future. It's free for you and means the world to me. And until next time, take care.